And the conversation has always been older workers will manage younger workers. We will develop them. We need to figure out how to communicate with them. We need to train them, get them into leadership roles, and move them along. There's not a lot of training out there about how younger workers manage older workers, how to communicate with them. So it's an unknown, and people are scared of an unknown. So I think companies need to do more to have younger workers learn how to manage older workers, certainly as the demographic in the workplace changes.
Hello, everyone. Patrick and I are really excited to come to you today with a new series that will be rolling out in our podcast. So if you've been with us this far, by the time you listen to this, we will have released just about 30 episodes between the Book of Law, Season 1, and Leadership and Motivation Unleashed, Season 2. We've covered topics across the spectrum, everything that connects to workplace, ethics, politics, interaction, what helps people succeed, what causes people to fail. We've tackled some really timely topics like AI, remote work, and then some really old school topics like how to handle bad behavior, right? How to plan a career path that will get you where we want to go. You've heard our hot takes on all of these. In many cases, Patrick and I agree with each other. In some cases, we disagree with each other. And we've also had such different experiences that we may have been in similar situations, but came out of it with very different takes or different perspectives because of our personalities, because of the roles that we held, and also the types of environments and the types of perspectives that we came to those with. And we hope you've enjoyed it. What we're going to do next is something a little interesting. Over the course of some of these same episodes, we have mentioned names of people that we admire, people that we've worked with over the years that have taught us lessons, that have dropped quotes, that have handled situations in really unique ways. And what we are going to do over the next series is introduce you to some of our favorite people. Patrick and I have reached out to some of the folks in our network who we feel have particularly unique experiences, perspectives, and stories that we'd like for them to share with you. And they've graciously agreed to come on our podcast and have conversations with us. And some of them will share different takes that they have on topics we've already covered. And others might share just different unique perspectives that we wouldn't be able to offer because we haven't had those experiences. And so over the next, probably couple of months, we are going to introduce you to some of our favorite people. We're really curious to hear from you if you like this format, if you'd like to have more conversations with others, or if you have any questions for our guests. I'm sure they'll be really excited to hear your feedback as well.
I love diversity of thought, and the list of people are diverse as it comes with regards to their experiences and the way they think and the greatness they've delivered into the environments they've populated. So I think everyone's going to enjoy it. I'm looking forward to it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this special guest episode of Leadership and Motivation Unleashed. Patrick and I are really excited to invite Steve Davis to come and speak with us today and share some of his wisdom. So as we've shared with you before, the reason why we're doing these guest episodes is because Patrick and I have been hosting this podcast for, over a year now. I think we've done over 30 episodes, and we've been sharing our thoughts and our hot takes and our controversial opinions on different topics, all relating to the future of work. And lots of you have reached out to us and have shared that some of these topics are things that you've been grappling with or struggling with or thinking about. And that's awesome, right? That helps us realize that we're on point when it comes to topics. But we acknowledge that we don't have all the answers to everything, and our perspectives aren't the only ones that matter. And so for this special series, we've decided to invite some of our most favorite people and people that we think have some really unique insights and ideas to share with all of you. And that's why I invited Steve. So Steve and I know each other, was it 10 years ago, Steve?
It absolutely was.
It was 10 years ago when Steve and I worked together at Bloomberg. Very interesting times back then. Mike was just in the process of returning from his few years away being mayor. So there was lots of change happening at the company. You were leading talent acquisition operations, recruitment marketing, all of the technology stack relating to the hiring process. And I was brought in to help build the diversity recruitment programs. And so we worked together for a little bit and we've stayed in touch throughout, bumped into each other at some recruitment technology meetups. Our paths have crossed as we've been advising different HR tech vendors. And we also know quite a few people in common. So even though it's been a bit of time since we've connected, it's so great to see you and to hear from you. Now, what Steve is doing today, and he'll share more about his background and the organization that he's running, but Steve will tell you about his really illustrious career in talent acquisition and technology. Steve was also one of the architects of building out Goldman Sachs's Veteran Leadership Program, which we'll share more about, and has done a lot of really innovative things in the recruiting technology space. And most recently, Steve has joined together with some people to found an organization that specifically supports experienced professionals who are looking for their next career stage. And so he'll share with us, and our conversation today will be primarily about some of the challenges that more experienced people experience when they are looking for their next career move. So over to you, Steve. Tell us about your background and a little bit more about what you do today.
That's great. Thank you for that, Rachel. And really great to see you again. And Patrick, nice to meet you. Really appreciate the chance to be here. So I wanted to start with a quick snapshot of my journey, why I've chosen to focus this part of my career on helping experienced professionals really thrive in today's job market. A lot of people are asking the same question: how do I make your experience matter in a world that seems to value youth and learning agility? And so my journey started a long time ago. I was a trust accountant for the Bank of New York. It was a solid job, but I knew early on it wasn't right fit for me. I moved into recruiting, where I found my stride, helping companies find and hire great talent. I became a partner at Heidrick & Struggles, and then I went on to Goldman, where, as Rachel mentioned, led recruiting for a number of divisions, but really my crowning achievement, I think, is the Veterans Integration Program. And then I helped Goldman grow GS Bank through the financial crisis. Recruiting for a bank in the midst of a financial crisis was really an interesting experience. Later on, I took leadership roles at Bloomberg, where, as Rachel mentioned, we had met. I had ran recruiting operations. And similar to my experiences at the Bank of New York, I found it too operational, wasn't the right role for me. And then I moved to Broadridge Financial, where I built and led the recruiting team. I modernized systems. I worked to improve speed of hiring and diversity. And eventually I shifted to consulting, helping companies strengthen their talent strategies. But I kept noticing something. Experienced professionals were getting overlooked. Even in a talent shortage, employers were favoring younger candidates, prioritizing learning agility over deep functional expertise. And ageism is everywhere. Around 90% of workers over 40 say that they've experienced ageism in the workplace. And what's really interesting is ageism is the only ism that we're all going to experience at some point, or we're open to potential, experiencing that. We're all going to hopefully get older.
Hope.
Right? It's the only one that everyone will experience. Eventually, as I said, I shifted to consulting, helping companies strengthen their talent strategies. And that's what really led me to co-found with my fantastic partners my next stage. And we're building a platform to rethink hiring from the ground up, starting with how we assess people to fit within an organization, but more importantly, how people fit within teams. There are a lot of tools out there today, but they're employee-centric, easy to game. They don't actually predict success. So we're flipping on that. And our platform uses AI and participant-driven psychometrics to help people understand how they work best, match them with the kinds of teams they'll thrive in, all grounded in science, not guesswork, and employers benefit too, with better retention, more diversity, and stronger teams. That's really important, but core of it, hiring is a huge industry, right? We're spending $325 billion on it, but we believe experience is being undervalued, and the workforce continues to age. Optimizing for fit, not just skills, is the way forward. So really, I'm excited to be part of this conversation and talk about how we build a job market that actually works for everyone.
That's awesome. Jumping right in. So what you're saying doesn't surprise me. The three of us have all been involved, in different perspectives, but leading hiring at scale in giant organizations, spending millions and millions of dollars to do so. And Steve, you've been closest to the mechanics and the infrastructure of how that machine works. This isn't something new, right? I remember, it's probably 15 years ago when I was working at AT&T. They had signed a partnership with the AARP, called Life Reimagined. I think first it was called Work Reimagined, then it was called Life Reimagined. And it was originally a job board for people who had retired and then either wanted to or needed to go back to work. And the whole goal was to demystify or destigmatize the value of experienced workers. And that was 15 years ago. So what has changed from your perspective, Steve? What has changed in the job search process that makes it more difficult for experienced workers? I know anecdotally, Patrick and I see and hear all the time from people in their 40s, 50s, 60s who have lots of runway left in them, but have been pushed out by their companies. We've seen corporations laying off entire levels of leadership. Why do you think this is a bigger issue now than it was before, or is it?
There's a lot to unpack in that question. Why is it harder to find older workers to find jobs? And then why are older workers getting let go or a higher rate of change than others? And those are two really separate things. But in terms of older workers, again, I think it comes back to misconception that older workers can't adapt. They're not as agile. They want to get paid more money. They are more costly. They don't want to change the way they work, set in their ways. And I don't think that's the reality. We look at founders of companies. I'm a founder. I'm past 60 years old. I don't think I'm stuck in my ways, and many people aren't. My next stage is working with many people who are older, who are thinking differently about their career, who are thinking about differently how about solve problems. In fact, I think the majority of founders are over 45 of new companies. So this idea that older workers are not as agile or nimble is just a fallacy. And so what we're trying to do in my next stage is build the science around that. Let's show companies that people are adaptable. They can change. They can fit in. They can make real meaningful contributions to organizations as they continue to grow in their career. But what happened on the job search front has changed the conversation a lot. And I've been recruiting for a very long time. Rachel, not nearly as long. Patrick, right? But Patrick's been in the job market in a while as well, whether it was transitioning out of, I think he was out of the military right now into corporate life and so on. But in my opinion, not a lot had changed in the job search market until very recently. So people posted jobs. They used to put ads in the newspaper or broadsheets. They'd hang them up on a pole or something, and people would get a resume in, whether they mailed it in or they walked it in or they faxed it in, then got more involved in the job boards. But nothing really changed in a very material way. The process was still the same, just the mode of delivery changed. And with AI, everything now looks the same. Job descriptions look largely the same. Skills are really being teased out of your background and experience. There's very little differentiation in how people are presenting themselves. And so what's happened is that the sort criteria has changed, and older workers seem to be not presenting themselves in a way that resonates with employers in a meaningful way. Why that is, I'm not exactly sure. It could have something to do with the algorithms and how people are positioning their resumes with what skills or how they achieve skills or the weighting of those skills in their tenure. But older workers need to do more to accentuate where they've gotten their skills, how their skills are relevant. And then, of course, there's just good old networking, right? You need to get yourself in there and differentiate yourself that way. But mass apply, I think, only going to hurt older workers in a disproportionate way.
Is there an example of where you're saying older workers are not properly accentuating their skill sets? What does that look like?
From what I've seen and what I'm hearing people is that they're getting auto-rejected from jobs at a faster rate. And I think it's because their experiences span, this is kind of my hot take assumption kind of thing. It's not, I don't have any science behind this yet, but we do know older workers stay out of work longer than younger workers. And even though they have the experiences and the skills, so there must be something that they're not getting the interviews, they're not getting selected. And there's clearly something that's screening them out. And I'm not saying it's a bias, right? In that I'm just saying that the way they're positioning their skills and their relevance to the job is not resonating, and they need to do more to do that. And you know what? Come back to mass supply for a second. It was not what I said, but people like me and my ilk, when we were early adopters of applicant tracking systems, I was a huge proponent of we need to make it really easy to have people apply, right? It needs to be frictionless. And that now in hindsight, now obviously AI is bots have made it easier anyway. That's changed over the last 12 to 18 months because of the technology. But a good amount of that was because the guys like me just said, it needs to be easy. People need to be able to do it on their phone. We need to have no gates. We need to just let people apply, really thinking that, okay, people who have the skills and who are qualified would apply, and why would we want to make it difficult for people to do that? I still think it was the right answer, but in hindsight, there was definitely a downside to that.
Well, it's careful what you wish for, right?
Right,
So
exactly,
open the
yes.
floodgates, but we need better screening or sifting tools to figure out which applicants to pay attention to.
And I think over time, that will continue to get better. The screening and the sifting will get better because we can't have turnover at the high rates that we've had in first-year hires. People are going in, they're not looking at team dynamic, they're just looking at the skills. They're saying, okay, this person can do the job, they can get up to speed quickly, let's hire them. And then they find out that work styles are different, right? We hear things like, oh, I don't want to go through 5, 6, 7 interviews because it's too long a process. Well, I think that's nonsense, because why would I take a job if I've only met 1 or 2 people, if I'm going to have to work across an organization? Don't I want to know the people that I'm working with? Don't I want to meet those people? Don't I want to have a view? It's not just about coming to work. You spend 8, 9, 10 hours a day, sometimes more, with these people. But you can't hate them. I mean, maybe you can, but it makes for a pretty miserable experience, everybody.
Yeah, no doubt.
How great your acting skills.
And before you get back to your next question, Rachel, I just want to say, so are you saying that ageism is accidental bias because of the length of an older person's career and then the gaps they take, that the systems are injecting a bias against them because of the way the paper reads? Or is it really their age?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. I think that the systems accidentally screening people out because they have not been built properly. I don't know that people aren't screening out older workers because there are biases. I don't think it's necessarily malicious. My current working hypothesis on some of this is we've all been in mid to large size companies, right? And the conversation has always been older workers will manage younger workers. We will develop them. We need to figure out how to communicate with them. We need to train them, get them into leadership roles, and move them along. There's not a lot of training out there about how younger workers manage older workers, how to communicate with them. So it's an unknown, and people are scared of an unknown. So I think companies need to do more to have younger workers learn how to manage older workers. Certainly as the demographic in the workplace changes, I think it's workers over 50 will exceed 60% of the workforce by 2050.
I guess as people live longer and are healthier and stay in the workplace longer, and as the next generations grow at lower rates, that I don't know if the exact numbers add up, but it wouldn't be totally shocking to me.
So that's the absolute truth. There are very few places in the world where knowledge workers are entering the workforce faster than knowledge workers are exiting the workforce. Except in Africa, where there are more knowledge workers entering the workforce than exiting the workforce. When U.S. birth rates are down, the birth rates are down. In Asia, the birth rates are down precipitously. I mean, there are huge birth rate gaps, right? And so here it is, the data on this. By 2040, 59% of the workforce will be over 40. In 1980, 59% of the workforce was between 20 and 30. So it's literally flipped in the span of a generation and a half, right?
Wow.
So that's extraordinary. Those are extraordinary numbers. And older workers being or underemployed will cost the economy roughly $1 trillion. It's an ARP study. this year. And by 2050, it's 3.9 trillion in lost productivity. And companies are saying they can't hire people. They don't know where to find them. And yet there's this population of people who are willing and ready to work.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of opportunity in the market if companies think about how to onboard, retain, employ, think about workforce planning differently, older workers.
We pick our topics based on what we imagine is on the minds of many, but we are not mind readers. So please use our form, which we'll link for you in the show notes, to suggest additional topics we should consider, request to be a guest on our show, or give us constructive criticism, which will make our podcast more valuable for many. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. I have some thoughts from being in the front lines of recruiting, and I spent about 20 years in recruiting. A lot of people, and by people I mean the people that are powering the technology, the recruiting coordinators that sometimes review the resumes first, the recruiters that do the interviewing, the hiring managers that receive the candidates for review, make a lot of assumptions about what people want to do, right? So it may not only be about the skills and experience, about whether they're overqualified or underqualified, or whether they're going to want too much money, but it's why would they want to do this job, right? And we don't always know what someone's rationale is, right? Sometimes people are like, hey, I made a ton of money. I don't want the stresses of managing 500 people anymore. I want to look for a different job that allows me to take more vacations or spend time with my grandkids or whatever, right? People have all kinds of calculations in their minds, and I think not everyone recognizes that. So we're very quick to make assumptions about, oh, they're going to come in and they won't be happy unless they can lead the whole department, which may not be true. So there have been tactics in the past where you remove the year of your graduation from your resume. You don't include all of your work experience on your resume, only the past 10 or 15 years. So there are lots of tactics that people have used over the years to try and mitigate the ageism that is out there. What are some things that you're guiding your members to do, or what are some best practices that you've seen?
It's a good question. And removing the dates of graduation and removing certain experiences only lasts so long because I have a lot of gray hair. At least, so those are absolute truths. As I was looking for a job as well, I was looking potentially to lead executive recruiting at a company, which is a level down, maybe even sometimes 2 levels down from where I was previously. It was just because I just wanted to recruit. I just wanted to go in and have an impact. And I didn't need to be the head of talent acquisition for a Fortune 500 company again. It wasn't a job that I even wanted anymore. I'd been there, I had done that, but nobody believes you. It was just so frustrating. Like the jobs that people were interested in me for, I was like, yuck, I don't want to do that anymore. And I just want to go in and get paid fairly. And I didn't even get paid what I was getting paid. I had no expectation around that. And so that's something that we've been coaching people who participate in my next stage on, which is you need to be genuine. You need to do that through networking, but also we're asking people to pursue learning. They need to be continuous learners. They need to pursue certifications, courses, stay relevant, but don't just list them. They need to tell compelling stories about the interview process, about how you've adapted new technologies or led innovative projects recently. Focus on the recently, because it's really important that you stay relevant, because the technology that you used a long time ago, and it doesn't have to be technology like you're a technologist, but any kind of processes or systems or whatever those are, right? Stay relevant, stay current. Show that your experience is an asset, not a hindrance. Not that, oh, we've done it that way, or I used to do it that way, but experience helps you see around the corners. And just because you did something one way once and it didn't work doesn't mean that there aren't newer ways of doing that you have learned from that you can implement to make those changes. So make your experience an asset and not a hindrance. It's not a cautionary tale that you're giving over. It's an experiences, and we can think about things differently. We should be thinking about things in a different way. That foresight can really be a strategic benefit to the company, as opposed to, oh, we can't do that, right? Or we did that and it didn't work. And some of the things that we would counsel people on are things like, in my years at company XYZ, I got to understand, I got to learn the industry inside and out, use that experience to navigate this or successfully lead that, and show how your experience has led you down a path, as opposed to, Yeah, I've been there, done that. I know what to do. That's not something that anybody wants to hear. That you can't come in and be like the sage, of all things.
That is true. What are you hearing from your clients, Steve, when you're walking them through keeping their minds open? How's that coming across?
So my next stage is new, right? And while we're building out our psychometric testing, we're not there yet. We've had early results, really positive results from the sample sizes and the testing that we've done. But as we're talking about the product and the service, and as we're talking about business challenges that companies are facing, and we're talking about how there's this gap in knowledge workers, the idea that re-employing older workers is resonating really well with people. Really understand that there's a business problem that they need to solve for. Hiring older workers, if there wasn't a problem, then we wouldn't need to come up with a solution, right? But there's a business problem. Older workers, you don't have a right to work just because you're older, right? Nobody has a right to work. But if there's a compelling business reason, then people should be getting hired. And I think that's what we're trying to solve for, is what's that compelling business reason? And it might be that the compact has changed with workers, meaning don't hire somebody into a job forever because you might not need that person for a long time. Don't think about it as, oh, I'm going to get hired as director XYZ or VP of this or even manager of that. Maybe it's come in, do your thing, go home, be done. Short-term or fractional work. I only need this piece of knowledge that you have. So we're encouraging our members in the companies that we're engaging with to think differently about the employment market. And again, that's resonating really well. Implementing all of those things, not the easiest thing to do, because it's a change in how people think about, one, how companies think about employment and what that means. And it's different from the employee's perspective too, especially as an older worker who's been really comfortable getting that W-2 and going to work every day and getting a paycheck and getting their bonus at the end of the year. And then, wash, rinse, repeat, do it again and again and again. But I think that it's going to change. And I think it's going to change not only for older workers, I think it's going to change for younger workers too, right? The idea of employment will change because people are cycling out of jobs faster. The average tenure now is 4.2 years for the Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2024, I think. So people are being employed for shorter and shorter period of time. It's a different employment market, right? And we're thinking differently about it. And when I started the workforce, it was, okay, so I graduated college and then I'd work for 40 years and then I'd be retired for 20 years and then I'll die. That's the reality, right? We used to say if somebody lived to 75, they lived a good life. That's not true anymore. And so there aren't a lot of levers that people who are in their 50s and their 60s can pull because they've missed the first two pieces, right? Their education and their early working years, right? They can't change the length of time that they spent doing that, but younger workers can. And so they can extend their educational periods. They can extend, I'm going to take some time off and then I'm going to go work for a little while. And then I'm going to go back to school, or I'm going to take some time off for here. I'm going to take these, what are they calling now? Micro breaks, right? Micro career breaks. I think there was an article in the Wall Street Journal about that just last week, right?
Which is basically a vacation.
Sounded like a vacation to me, right?
I was like, what?
Yeah, so I'm like, micro, that sounds like a vacation. But I was just talking to somebody who's younger in their career, and she's like, yeah, I'm really tired. I'm like, and what came up to me was, well, you've been at this place for 10 years. Don't they have a sabbatical program? And they do, but she hasn't taken advantage of it yet. I think there'll be more of that. Right. And so younger workers will have the opportunity to extend pieces of their career so that when they hit that 60, they're not done, but that they have more time. But we don't have that. Older workers don't have that option.
It's
There's stuff all over the place about micro breaks.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Oh, you just Googled micro breaks?
I did while you guys were talking, because apparently I'm too old to know what a micro break is, like you guys all on vacation. But oh my God, there's like colleges with articles, Time Magazine, Clinical Inford.
Yeah, it was syndicated all over the place. But Steve, that's a really interesting point, because Patrick and I have talked about this topic before, where the contract between employers and employees is changing. Expectations are shifting in both directions. And one of the biases I think employers have about not employing older workers is they say, well, I need someone with more runway. They'll probably want to retire in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. Again, making assumptions because you have no idea what people want to do. At the company Patrick and I work for, we have an employee who's past her 40th anniversary and her family wanted her to retire and she didn't want to. And so we figured out a way that she can still work flexibly because that's what she wants, right? Everyone likes to make assumptions. And people love to make assumptions that young workers job hop, but maybe you only need someone for 3 years or 2 years or 1 year, right? And so it could actually be a good thing where you don't feel like you have to keep doing layoffs and paying severance. Maybe you say, hey, we believe this project is 18 months or is 2 years. Are you up for it? Knowing that someone has a unique mix of skills to be able to do that, which maybe somebody with less facets to their experience wouldn't have.
I think as an idea, that's brilliant, right? I'd love to see more workforce planning around that and CHROs taking a leadership role and saying, really need somebody forever if they have the right skills. I think that's really awesome to do. And if somebody leaves after 18 months, well, if the average tenure is 4.2 years, you really need somebody who's going to have longer runway? Hire them to do the job.
It's true.
You know, why wouldn't somebody who's a senior professional who's brought in to run a function, right, say, you know what, I got 5 years left, and as a leader, it would have given me great joy to build and grow my successor. And just say, here, now you're ready. Take that job. Build a team below you. That'd be awesome to do. I think a lot of people would want to do that. So why wouldn't a company want to take on an older worker who has that outlook? Because we don't believe it to be true.
Especially if you align on expectations up front. This is something I think smaller companies are more flexible about doing. We've hired people at Checkout, the company we work for now, where we've said, we expect this role to be a fixed term assignment for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And then when it ends, it either expires because it's supposed to be over, or of course, you have the opportunity to renew if something changes. But then you don't end up with hard feelings when it ends because it's a contract, it's an assignment, it's a tour of duty, right? Like in the military. So maybe we need to think through more of that. And there's way fewer repercussions, right? Of, oh, if I hire someone older, then I can never get rid of them because then they'll sue me for ageism. Well, if the job was only supposed to be for this time period, right? Of course you have the ability to extend. The employee might say, no, thanks, I'm good. I'd like to move on to my next thing, or I want to go and live halfway across the world parts of the year.
Yeah. And if more companies thought that way, the knowledge worker gap would be much smaller.
Okay. So if you're listening and you're a business leader and you are struggling to fill certain roles on your team, or maybe you're thinking, hey, the people that I keep hiring just aren't cutting it. Maybe it's time to broaden your horizons about the candidate profile that you're looking for. Maybe you need to look for somebody with more experience, be really upfront with them about what the role is, what the expectations are, what the compensation is. And you might get a whole lot more than you could ever have expected in terms of value, professional maturity, and the ability, as Steve said, to see around the corners. So I love that. We're going to do a quick lightning round because we're getting close to time. So quick lightning round, Steve. Ready?
I hope so.
Okay. Who is a leader you admire, dead or alive?
Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay. Tell us why.
He's a guy who had a varied career, right? He was the police commissioner of New York. He was the governor. He was the president. He had a decorated military service. He was a naturalist. He was a hunter. He was an explorer. This was a guy who just did so many different things. He led the redevelopment of the Panama, he took over the Panama Canal project. There was nothing that he didn't touch. It's successful reforms, trust busting, but he was, an industrialist. This is a guy who just a problem and figured out how to solve for it.
Awesome.
Was that 30 seconds or less?
I think it was high quality and worth it. So thank you. And I bet all of those experiences built on each other. So as you accumulate more experiences in life, you're able to accomplish more because you brought in your
Although some of the things he jumped into, he was very young, right? He was a very young governor of New York. And of course, that happened a lot through, I think, patronage. He rose to the occasion.
That's awesome. What achievement are you most proud of?
I had already said it. I mean, the Veterans Program at Goldman was extraordinary. It was by far the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my career. And hard not like because it took any convincing to do. It was just hard because there was a lot of work that went into it, but it had a lasting impact in the industry. It became almost a model for how a lot of Wall Street firms ended up hiring veterans. And so leaving that program was the hardest part about leaving Goldman. When I did and went to Bloomberg, that's an easy answer.
How many vets did you hire, Steve?
The program's still going, and it's morphed a little bit over the years of volume hiring shop.
Yeah.
Our first year, I think we did, it started out as an internship program. We hired, I think it was 12 the first year. 11 were converted to full-time employees. And then we did maybe 20 and change the following year, almost all converted. But the program, I don't know the size today. It's a decade later, but it continues.
I remember reading about it when you fired it up. So it's so cool that I get to meet you, like on this podcast. I helped run U.S. Bank's Veterans Program, Proud to Serve. I was an ops guy for a payments group inside the bank. I'm not an HR guy by trade, but I did a lot of leadership things at U.S. Bank Corp. And being part of that veterans program was way up my list of things that I will hold on to forever because of my time at the bank. And a buddy of mine named Eric Kidd, if you're listening, Eric, you may remember this, but he's the one that sent me the article about your program. I didn't know it was you then. We were just like, oh man, things so it's cool. And then we started something called Bankers in Boots. And that's where we started bringing in officers. And I'm not an officer. I'm one of the few non-coms running around in the types of jobs I had. So I was fighting to get non-commissioned officers as part of the Bankers in Boots program. But your program thrusts forward a bunch of other things in areas that you're probably not even aware of because of the good work you did. So thank you for doing it.
Thank you for saying that. I wasn't alone in that, obviously. There were a lot of great people who we worked with during that program. So can't take full credit to some extraordinary people that we worked with. What did I know about hiring veterans? Was kid grew up, I didn't have any friends or relatives who had served. And I was covering the operations division at Goldman. And this guy comes to me and goes, we're going to go to this thing called the SAC conference, the Service Academy Career Conference. And I'm like, all right. And the campus teams didn't want to go because they didn't know what to do with, 30-year-olds who were going to come in and sit next to an analyst or an associate. And I was like, all right, I'll go. And so, I ended up going to these programs. And then when the drawdown happened in 2000 and whatever that was, when we were in the program,
10, 11,
10, 11, something like that. And they were like, all right, you've gone to this conference, so you figure out how we're going to hire veterans. And so that's what happened. It was just, like, you're a veterans guy now in the recruiting team.
And then I think you broke the sentences, which drawdown and which third.
I think it was 10, 11 was when we started the program. Yeah. But I had a really great model, right? Because Goldman had the returnship program already, where the women who were returning largely women, people who were after a career break. So I really used that as a model for this. This is nothing that I created out of my head. I just the implementation. But it was really an extraordinary time. And I got to work with incredible people, and I got to meet even more incredible people and extraordinary leaders over at that time.
Well, thank you for what you did. I'm sure those vets appreciated it a great deal.
Thank you.
Of course. One other question we like to ask is, what was your biggest mistake?
Oh, my goodness. I think career-wise, my biggest mistake was probably leaving Goldman when I did, or maybe going to the role that I went to at Bloomberg. It was the wrong job. It was the wrong time. It was the wrong thing. Not that there's anything wrong with Bloomberg. It's a great organization. It's a great company, serves its clients really well. But it was the wrong job for me. And it was largely an operations job. I'm definitely a more market-facing person. In the end, though, it worked out okay, because I think that without that, I wouldn't have gotten the head of recruiting job at Broadridge, even the short period of time, the operational experience that I thought I needed. But I think I left something and I didn't go to something. And I think maybe that's the mistake, right? Is that there was maybe a push, but there wasn't enough of a pull. You think about your career, the learning for me was there needs to be both sides of the equation. You need to be to whatever it is you're going to. It's not enough just to leave something.
And the timing has to be right. You and I were there at the same time. We ended up there in a very, very tricky time transformation-wise. Mm-hmm. Sometimes companies are going through some stuff that you never would imagine or know about when you're going through the interview process. And then you show up and you're like, whoa, I didn't realize all this was happening, right?
Yeah, and again, there were other learnings from that. And I think one of the biggest learnings for me was the language. I'll use that as an example because that's relevant here. You both use the word team, talk about the environment. And what I found that, and I don't know if this was your experience, Rachel, or not, but at Bloomberg, team meant a lot like a baseball team. individuals doing their own thing, and occasionally they needed to do something on their own. Whereas Goldman team meant it was like a hockey team or a basketball team. Everybody needs to do the same thing all at one time, otherwise it's not going to work. They're just radically different. And I thrive in one environment and I didn't thrive in the other. Words matter, how we use words. I think that's another learning experience that. In general, I think that was probably my biggest mistake, but I think the learning was a really important one.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. So any takeaways? Patrick, what are some takeaways that you'd like to leave everyone with from this conversation?
I think the one that really jumped out at me was goes back to our Lattice podcast where Steve was talking about you don't need to be the SVP, EVP all the time, get your head right and give back. You didn't use those words, Steve, but like getting the next generation or the next person, maybe they're older than you, ready to take that job because you're going to move on. I think it's an incredibly mature thing that I haven't witnessed a lot of, by the way, but it sounds great. And it would certainly be nice if more people did it. So from a takeaway for me is for people to like really do some searching of their own souls or their own mindset or whatever words you want to shoot in there and figure out what you want to be when you grow up. Because it's coming. It's coming for all of us.
Yeah. And know that there's community out there, right? If you're an experienced worker or an older worker and you keep getting rejected by automated application tracking systems, know that there's many others like you that are experiencing something similar. And there are organizations that are out there to support you. And I'll ask Steve to share how you can get in touch with My Next Stage so that you can benefit from all the resources, but you are not alone. And my takeaway, I always like to give one for the employee and one for a business leader or manager. If you're struggling to find someone for your team or something just isn't working and you need to do something different to change your results, then consider crafting your job in a slightly different way, right? Instead of just washing, rinsing, repeat and clone of whoever did it last, maybe take a step back and say, what if I hired somebody with more experience or somebody more senior, but I hired one instead of two junior people, or I hired one senior person at 60% of the time instead of a junior person for 100% of the time, or I just carved out this role for a year instead of making it an ongoing commitment. And you might be really surprised at the results that you might get and the benefits that are available to you. So, Steve, any final nuggets of wisdom that you'd like to share with our audience?
The job search is a hard one. You're not alone. People are going through it. Be kind to yourself. Take some breaks here or there. Finding a job is a job, but it's not the only thing that you need to do. And you should forgive yourself to get out there and keep looking, but don't beat yourself up because you're not working, and your physical and mental health is really important. Don't give themselves that little bit of leeway and just do that. You're not your job, right? That's not who you are as a human being. And so don't let it come all of your persona.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So Steve, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can go to our website and click our join button. It's mynextstage.co. So it's all one word, My Next Stage. Or you can just email me, steve@mynextstage.co.
Awesome. And we'll share all this information in the show notes. Steve, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much. We really appreciate.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Great meeting you. Thank you, Rachel. This was so much fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yes,
thanks.
Likewise. Thanks for tuning in to Leadership and Motivation Unleashed. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating and review. It only takes 1 minute and it helps the show grow and reach more leaders like you in search of advice and motivation.
And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Please remember to share with your friends and family and coworkers, mentors, trusted advisors. This show is for everybody. See you next time.